It's my feel-good breakfast show.
You can't deny it. The sound of the child's laughter just immediately just sparks that smile on your face. It's time for baby talk, and today's topic as a new dad is quite close to my heart. We're talking about breastfeeding because the 1st to the 7th of August is World Breastfeeding Week. And in South Africa, we have one of the lowest rates of moms breastfeeding, in fact, a low 32%. And with this week, we're trying to highlight, bring awareness to, first of all, the fact that breast milk is really the best and the benefits to mom and baby. And here to talk to us about it, we've got Catherine Pereira, or Katie, who's a spokesperson of the Association of Dietetics for South Africa. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Katie. Thank you very much. Now, we spoke about breastfeeding. You know, we've also seen it. I mean, there's been a strong drive towards, you know, pro-breastfeeding, especially on social media out there with a lot of women being proud thereof. But if you take a look at breastfeeding, I mean, that's most of human history. That's how babies were fed. But why has it become more and more common not to breastfeed in the modern day and age? What is happening?
So I think there's two main reasons why this has happened. The first is if we think about 1 or 2 generations ago, our mothers, our grandparents, many women stayed at home, they didn't work. So they were able to breastfeed at home. Often they would form informal support groups with each other, have the time, space and support to be able to breastfeed. Now we have many women who work for many reasons. And it's quite difficult to balance working and breastfeeding, but also we don't have comprehensive maternity protection to support mothers, to give them enough maternity leave and to give them enough paid leave to be able to stay home to breastfeed. It's also a case of support from the community, you know, accepting public breastfeeding, support from family, support from the workplace, support from health facilities. And the second reason is that there's been a massive boom in the infant formula industry. So companies that produce breast milk substitutes in the last 30 years, there's a lot of evidence to show that their sales just keep on increasing. And there's strong regulations and legislation around the marketing and promotion of infant formula, but many companies do unethical marketing and promotion of infant formula, and it kind of entices a mother to think that infant formula might be as good as, if not even better than breast milk. So there's a lot of work being done at the moment to try to prevent that.
So maybe let's talk about that, the misconceptions around breast milk versus formula. And I mean, by this, we're not in any way, I think, trying to discourage moms from using formula if they need to, because sometimes it does act as a supplementary source of food. But the other day, my mind was blown when I Googled what is in breast milk, and then there's a sheet that shows all the ingredients of breast milk versus formula. You're like, very good. What? What are some of the misconceptions with regards to these two sources of food?
So like you say, many people think that infant formula is equivalent to breast milk, but it's actually not. There's many components in breast milk, one of the most important being antibodies. So these are actual biological molecules made by the mother's immune system that help to strengthen a baby's immune system, because a newborn baby doesn't have a fully developed immune system. So the antibodies help to prevent the baby from getting sick. And you know, many babies get chest infections, diarrhea, but all of the research shows that babies that are breastfed get sick less often than babies that are fed infant formula. And like you said, there's more and more research coming out around we still don't understand all of the components in breast milk and how amazing it actually is. And the antibodies specifically cannot be artificially replicated in any form. So there's no other substance that can provide that. As you mentioned, there's a very small number of cases where mothers can't breastfeed, but the majority of mothers, if they are supported by health workers, the family and the workplace, are able to successfully breastfeed.
It is a collective effort, and I know this from raising 2 boys as well. You know, Dad must get in there as much as he can as well to help and encourage as well. But this is a big topic. Please feel free to weigh in on this conversation, 021 430 9881. We spoke about the percentage in South Africa for women breastfeeding being very, very low. Why is that? Is it because, you know, formula is perceived to be an easier option? Is because, like you've mentioned, you know, with the work situation as well, is it a lack of knowledge? What is going on? So
it's a very complex situation, and we can sit and talk about that all day, but I'll try to summarize it for you. It's some of the factors I mentioned earlier, but you know, we have a big population in South Africa that works informally, and informal workers such as domestic workers or even contract workers often get no paid maternity leave. So the law states that women should get 4 months of maternity leave, but it doesn't state that payment is mandatory. Many companies and governments do pay women, but not all.
Yeah.
There's a big drive to increase this to ensure that women should get 6 months of paid maternity leave. But what happens is women need to earn money, and the majority of our country it does live in a situation where they don't have enough money in the household, so women need to go back to work, and often these informal workers, a vulnerable group, aren't able to continue breastfeeding. There's research globally to show that as soon as women go back to work, their rates of breastfeeding decrease. So it's very complicated. There's a lot of issues. And what a big issue also is that because women often might think that they don't have enough milk, which is a misconception a lot of the time, they start to introduce infant formula, and that disrupts the breast milk production process. So the more often you feed, that stimulates hormones to produce more breast milk for the next feed. So if you start giving formula or tea or solids, and South Africa has one of the highest introduction of solids rates, early introduction of solids rates in the world, that interferes with the breast milk production. So many women then start buying infant formula but actually can't afford it, so they end up over diluting it, which means the baby isn't getting all of the energy and nutrients they need. And we have very high rates of malnutrition in South Africa in children under the age of 5 and 2.
I think for me the scary thing is that we even have to have a conversation where we have to think about why companies, whether corporate or not, or organizations, don't give paid leave or mandatory paid leave to moms who are breastfeeding their children, trying to raise a healthy nation, so that one day those kids could be contributing members of society and to the economy, will most likely work for those very same companies years and years down the line. Okay, I'm getting a bit too philosophical
No,
right
but
now.
can I just interrupt there, because there's very clever people, economists, who have done actual research on that investing in breastfeeding and optimal nutrition in the first 1,000 days of life, which is from pregnancy up until 2 years, it has economic benefits to the country later on. Increased GDP, increased ability for children to finish school, increased ability for people to get jobs, because breastfeeding is associated with an increased IQ and a decreased prevalence of disease and disability. So, I mean, there is research to show that investing in breastfeeding reaps many benefits that are much bigger than what you need to invest to support a mother to breastfeed.
Yeah, well, in case you didn't know it, it is Breastfeeding Awareness Week globally from the 1st to the 7th of August, and we'll continue our conversation with Katie shortly. You can give us a call on 021 430 9881.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
That is brilliant, man. Love it. So welcome back to the Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso right here on SABC3. It's baby talk time once again. We hang out with Catherine Pereira this morning, spokesperson for the Association for Dietetics in South Africa, and also a lecturer at UWC, and that's doing research currently on breastfeeding support in South Africa as well. Kathy, thank you very much for joining us this morning once again.
Thanks for
So
having me.
we're getting calls from all over the world,
Yeah,
if you will.
man.
We got a call from Botswana.
Yeah.
And a lady saying that she's receiving a lot of pressure from community, friends, I guess family, that she's breastfeeding for too long. She's gone on for 1 year now, and people are saying, well, she's creating a kind of dependency between herself and the child. Should she be worried about that the child will never be weaned off the breast milk?
That's a good question. So the World Health Organization and UNICEF, our global health authorities, together with the National Department of Health, recommend exclusive breastfeeding up until 6 months, which is giving only breast milk, no tea, no milk, juice formula, and then continued breastfeeding up until 2 years and beyond, together with the introduction of adequate, safe, appropriate complementary foods. And the first message is also that breastfeeding should be started within the first hour of life. So continuing breastfeeding at a year is amazing. It's wonderful. It's excellent. And in a country like South Africa, where we have there's varying statistics, but a big portion of the country is food insecure, which means households do not have enough food to provide families with enough meals each day. And breast milk can continue to provide about half of the amount of energy that a baby needs from 6 months to a year, together with the complementary foods. And from 1 to 2 years, breast milk can continue to provide about a third of the energy needs. So we have high rates of malnutrition in South Africa and other African countries like Botswana. So breast milk definitely to continue up until 2 years and beyond is actually our public health message. And doesn't create a dependency. It's very beneficial for the baby.
Brilliant. We have another caller on the line, Nana from Cape Town. Good morning.
Hi there.
Good. What is your question for Kathy this morning, or your comment?
Great. Okay, so a few years ago I had my baby. He's 4 now, and I was breastfeeding from the onset. So breastfed him so much apparently that he got obese and his chest was closing up. So I took him to the doctor and he was rushed to the hospital. And they told me that he's obese. They took me to a dietitian and I didn't understand why because I wasn't feeding him anything else. It was just breast milk.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Kathy?
Okay. So interesting. I mean, this is a kind of unique situation, but generally breastfed babies tend to gain more weight and they go through a different growth curve compared to babies that are given infant formula. And they can be a slightly higher weight at certain stages. But the long-term research shows that breastfeeding is actually associated with a lower chance of childhood and adult obesity. There's a lot of research to show that. So it's great that the caller was able to see a dietitian. In situations like that, sometimes people need specific individualized advice, but generally breastfeeding is associated with lower rates of obesity. The important thing to remember is that from 6 months, babies do need complementary foods in addition to breast milk. So you can't continue only feeding breast milk.
After 6 months.
Yeah, and usually complementary foods are lower in energy. They're not as energy dense as breast milk. So, yeah.
All right. Another question came in talking about low production of
milk
breast milk.
production,
Of breast milk. How do you know when you're producing too little? Is it possible to produce too little with regards to your baby? Because every mom and baby situation is different.
Yeah. So this is an important topic because many women think that they're not producing enough milk.
Okay.
And there's a couple of issues around this. Obviously, it's difficult for you to see how much milk is going from your breast to the baby, but there are other ways to determine if the baby's drinking enough milk, and that is by if the baby's gaining adequate weight, if they're having enough wet nappies, and various other aspects that get assessed. But often the biggest problem is that the mother's not feeding often enough, firstly, and many mothers don't realize that newborn babies need to be fed every few hours. So we don't have a specific time explanation. We say we should feed on demand, or it's baby-led feeding or responsive feeding. So whenever the baby's hungry, the baby should be fed, and that's different for different babies. But how do you know that a baby's hungry? So there's certain feeding cues like crying, but crying can also mean many different things.
Yes.
Putting their hands in their mouth, opening their mouth, trying to reach for the breast. But the important thing to know is that when a baby is born, its stomach is the size of a cherry, and by the end of a month, the stomach is the size of an egg. So that's really small. So babies' tummies get full very quickly, but they're growing at such a rapid rate that they use the energy and nutrients quickly. It needs to be replaced. So many women don't understand that you need to feed every few hours and even through the night for the first few months. And that's difficult to sustain. And many women are quite happy when they've got their baby to sleep through the night. But in the first few months, babies shouldn't be sleeping through the night because they need to be replaced. And this is where women then start introducing infant formula or porridge or something else to fill the baby up because they think the baby's not getting enough. And then that interferes with their milk production and decreases milk production. So
Comes
it's all
down
quite a
to
complex
knowledge
issue
at the end
and
of the day.
education.
I want to quickly just turn the tables in terms of you mentioned support is a very big thing when it comes to breastfeeding. You know, from you know maybe moms and parents and even dad. So when it comes to dad, what can dad do to help facilitate the breastfeeding process? How do we do it?
And I'm sure you dads have helped a lot with your wives and
As much as we could, I think.
Yeah. So there's many ways, and support is the biggest thing. And different women have different needs, so might need to be supported in different ways. Certain things are helping around the house, you know, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, doing a bit of cooking, giving the mother some healthy snacks. I've heard of mothers who don't eat anything until 12 o'clock in the day because they've been so busy feeding, changing nappies, they're on their own, you know, trying to clean the house, and they've got extra requirements, so they need to eat. But support can also take the form of changing nappies, you know, doing bath time, so that you give the mother a bit of time and space so that she can be less stressed, because being too stressed also influences milk production. And another thing that some families do is because the mother has to wake up so often in the night during the first few months, I mean, many new mothers are exhausted. Some mothers will express milk during the day, and then a few nights a week, then dad can wake up in the middle of the night, give the baby express breast milk, and allow mom to sleep for a bit longer. So there's many ways. We just need to create a bit more awareness about how it's not only the woman's responsibility to breastfeed. And one of my mentors always says it takes a village to raise a child.
It does.
And, you know, that's still the case. We still need to be supporting mothers to be able to breastfeed.
I'm just jumping on that other topic now between bottle and nipple, because I know we're not going to get into it, but I mean there's so much to be talking or to be spoken about with this topic. But thank you very much, Kathy. Really appreciate it, man. Big one.
Absolutely, Take a look at those social media hashtags, World Breastfeeding Week, for more information and educate yourself. In fact, do yourself a favor and Google what's in breast milk. It'll absolutely blow your mind. Thank you, Rose.
Okay.